guys, this is Miss Lawson, and we're going to be working on lesson 2 of our color study. Now, this lesson is important to take the information that we learned last time in the warm and cool colors to create our next piece of art. This is called a resist. So you're going to be taking painter's tape, and it does have to be special tape because you won't be able to get it off the paper if it's not. And your parent is probably going to help you to make a letter. It could be the letter of your name, it could be the letter of your friend's name you're making it. And then you're going to take your paint and paint over it. The tape is going to resist the paint, means it's not going to stick. And then when you rip off the paint, you'll have the letter that you taped off. Now, why are warm and cool colors important? Because if you want to use blue, purple, green, and pink, red, orange, or yellow, you can't quite use them at the same time, because if you do, you'll make, what do we make? Mud. And we don't want to make mud. As you can see, I did use all those colors. And in the video you're going to watch me, I use my warm colors first. I let that dry. Then I go back and add my cool colors on top. That's very important, so that way you don't mix up the colors. So you're gonna go over the materials with me, and then we're gonna get started making our tape resist art. Okay, we're going to start our tape resist artwork. We're gonna talk about our materials. Now, paint. I'm gonna be using a, it's like a poster paint, a tempera paint. It is washable, and it's in these containers, and I love bright colors. So I'm gonna be using some of these neon colors. I will be putting them, I'll have a little plate. Make sure it's plastic coated, because if it's a paper plate, it will soak into the plate. Along with that, you will need water, paper towel, paint brushes. Now, because we're painting over something, we're not creating a specific design on the paper. The bigger the brush, the better. So I'm going to go for something like this, but any type would work. That's a stiffer brush. These are watercolors that are more flimsy. That's not the kind of brush you want. You want something more with the stiff. So any size will work if your child wants to use, but I'm going to go with bigger because I like that. So we have brush, we have paint, paper. There are 2 different types that I recommend. It does need to be a heavy duty paper. A mixed media is what I'm using. This is 9x12. This is from a craft store, or you could get a watercolor. This is from Walmart. It is a larger piece. You could cut it in half and do 8x10. Or 11 by 15 if you want to do more, maybe, you know, a monogram. So, and then also you will need a painter's tape and scissors. And the reason you need scissors is, yes, you can rip the painter's tape, but for the letters, you want to have more of a clean edge. So that's why we're going to use scissors. So grab all your materials and meet me back here. Okay, now that I've got my paint ready, I'm going to get our tape and we're going to put the letter on the paper. So it depends on what letter you're doing. I am doing a B. So I got my first long piece. The curved part of the letters are going to be the hardest. Now it does have to be a tape that's not going to allow paint to soak through. So that's why I'm using a painter's tape. Again, I'm cutting the edges to make clean edges. This can be done on a canvas also, a great party art project. You would just have to prep everything before. Probably should have measured. And technically the side that's on top of each other, like this does not have to be cut because it's on here. But I do need to cut the edge that is not. This method is really cool to do for other things. I'll post a picture of actually a skeleton project I did with my kids. The kids were little, so they could lay on the canvas, and I kind of sketched out around their body, and then I used painter's tape to create the skeleton base of the painting, and then the kids got to use black acrylic paint and paint over the painter's tape. And then I took off the painter's tape, and the white bone, their skeleton, was left on the canvas.
and it looks really cool. One of my favorite things. I hang them up every Halloween in the house, and the kids love to talk about them. Actually, one of them, Gaines's skeleton, actually wasn't. I had painted a bunch of paint underneath it, so it kind of looks like his veins and muscles underneath it. So I'll have to show you that. Okay, so I've got my bee. Again, obviously it's a little blocky because of the painter's tape, but you get the idea. So you could have this prepped and ready for your child or a party. And then our goal is we're just going to paint. So again, the warm and cool kind of comes in help handy if you have done that lesson, because if you're going to put orange and purple on and when it's wet, it's going to make a mud color. So I'm going to kind of focus on my warm colors, my orange and red and yellow first, let that dry a bit before I add the purple and green over. And if they mix, it's just experiment. I'm always tell my kids start with the lightest color first. So I'm just going to paint over it. Again, there's no right or reason. And I did not squirt a lot of paint because, again, I don't want all the paint. I'm just going to use some of the colors. And I'm just using lines. I'm going to go wash my brush off before I go back to the yellow because it's mixing a little more than I want. If they have to wash it off, just make sure they gently bounce it off the bottom of their cup. Wipe it off the side. We don't like to tap because it splatters. Dab it on the paper towel. Then go back to painting. Okay, so I'm going to let this brush soak. I'm going to give this layer a few minutes to dry before I'm adding our cool colors, our blue, purples, and greens on top of it. Because if you don't do this, it will mix into a muddy-ish color. I don't know about neons. Neons, I'm not sure what color they would mix into, but it would not be the bright colors that they are. Okay, so I know it's still wet. You can obviously see the big blobs that I added, but it's dry enough where I can add the other colors on top. And again, the bigger blobs, it's going to take longer to dry. Blow drying in between layers or after this layer will help speed up the process. Okay. So I think I'm done. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush off completely. Again, this painter's tape is kind of finicky. I never know how it's going to come off the paper. Sometimes it works better when it's wet. Sometimes it works better when it's dry. But I feel like the times that I've waited, it then doesn't come off or it rips the paper. So I'm just going to slowly pick it off. Okay, so all the painter's tape, it came off pretty well. They just had one little section, it got stuck right there, and it ripped the paper. So if it does that, the slower you pull it, the easier it will not, less likely it will not rip the paper. But this is a cool little project you can hang up in their room, on their door to their room. Again, it's a great party art activity. You can have it all prepped and ready and then just leave out all cool colors or all warm colors for them to use, or maybe all different shades of pink, all different shades of blue, all different shades of green, depending on how the theme of your party. But I hope you enjoyed creating a tape resist artwork with me today.
Gosh, guys, thank you for joining me in lesson 2 of our color study, the tape resist art. I hope you enjoyed this time with me. Remember to subscribe, check out my Instagram or Facebook of all the cool things that are happening in the art world over at the Art Barn Studio.